Is there anybody out there? Welcome to a brand new episode of the Five Heart Podcast, brought to you by CornerNation.com, part of the SB Nation Podcast Network. I'm your host, Marvelous Greg Mahochko. Over here to this guy, founder and fearless leader. I can't think of something alliterative with the J sound, so we'll just go with John Dam Johnston. And down here, terrific Todd Wolverton. We hope that you're doing well. I know I'm doing well. John sent the link, and when he got no response, if you're wondering why we're in space, 2/3 of us, John sent a link, and when nobody arrived to the Zoom call, he said, "Hello, is anybody out there?" And that took me to a very special place, John. I was transcended to Comfortably Numb by Pink Floyd. So I want to thank you for taking me back to my younger days.
You're welcome. This show is starting out like an NPR episode.
Yes. And now we welcome Todd Wolverton to the show. Todd, how are you? Where are you?
I'm doing just
What
fine.
color underwear are you wearing?
I think it's blue today.
I like that you're holed up there in nameless town. We're not able to say exactly where for security reasons. We can't say exactly where in Nebraska Todd is. We can say he met some folks the day that we're recording this Wednesday who said they were going to tune in to this episode on Friday. So we apologize in advance.
What are we apologizing for? We're nice people most of the time.
We are. Here's the thing. We're nice people. I think we're nicer when it's not football season.
Yes.
But we do. We're outside of February. I'm surprised. Now, maybe it's because I missed half an episode. Todd was gone, something. But I feel like Todd has not been unnecessarily negative over head coach Scott Frost in a while. So we're going to hope that stays. Todd, I know you're in great spirits tonight, so let's just hope that you keep that positive train rolling, and we're going to – oh, there we go. Now we're all out of this world. Now, if you're just listening to the podcast, first of all, that's great, and we love you and we thank you. But if you're watching this on YouTube, a lot of this will make a lot more sense. Oh, but it's great to be here with you guys. I did not know if I was going to make this week's episode because half hour ago, I'm still holding one of the twins in my arm, and he's like looking up at me and laughing and lifting his head and in no hurry to go to sleep. 3 minutes later, I sent you guys a message. We're like, all right, I'll be there in 5. Kids are great. You just never know what to expect. So
that's true. Todd, do you have any parenting trips? We're just disconnected. We are starting this disconnected. Let's go. Let's get some energy going. Todd, do you have any parenting tips for Greg?
Yeah, I do have parenting tips.
Woo, we're starting off better. What do you got?
Don't let your son grow up to be Scott Frost.
Oh, geez.
My God. What the hell?
First of all,
it's March.
It's almost April. Actually, by the time people hear this, it'll be April. So,
okay, I'm sorry.
I don't think his kids have any chance of growing up to be Scott Frost because there's already one.
And they're not named Scott Frost at all. Not in first or middle names. So
I'll tell you what. Here's something I learned today. And John, well, both of you guys can, well, to some extent can appreciate this. I've been accused by my friend John of being a leftist, commie, pinko, liberal. And so, I'll wear that if need be to make him feel better about himself. But I have, in my new job, I've been out in a lot of schools, and been spending quite a few days in different Catholic schools. And having not had any experience in my professional career, other than coaching against kids who represent Catholic schools, I've learned a lot. And, I think one of the huge misconceptions is that there's vast difference between public schools and private schools. And to be quite honest, there really isn't a lot of difference, but the differences that do exist are really significant. And one of the things that has truly impressed me is the self-respect that teachers are able to instill in kids in these Catholic schools. And, I understand that there's the very strong connection to faith, and that's who they are, and they wear that. And but as I've thought a little bit about it, I think maybe one of the biggest disservices that we're doing as parents with our children is that we do not help them build self-respect. And this era of entitlement, and that it's somebody else's fault, and that I am less than someone for whatever reason there might be, or I'm going to allow people, I'm going to give away, my ability to feel good about myself because of what other people say. That's handcuffing a whole generation of kids. And there's no reason at all why we have some of the social and emotional problems that we have with young people today, when as parents, we could do a heck of a lot better job of helping our kids be comfortable in their own skin, recognizing who they are, and feeling good about themselves. So there's my parent tip.
Well, I don't know what to say to that. I could say all sorts of things. We could go down this rabbit hole and spend a long time on it, but people would go, what? That's not really what you guys do.
No, we better talk about Nebraska football or something else.
but I think but to your point, Todd, I think it's important. There's so many, like Instagrams and all this pressure put on it, and admittedly not just kids. Look at adults, 20s, 30s, whatever new fad diet comes along, things like that, to look a certain way, act a certain way. And it's, I feel bad for kids. To an extent, I really do feel bad for kids who are growing up in the social media era. I didn't have to, so I still felt, and sometimes do feel pretty shitty about myself, but that was before social media. So I feel kids got it tough. So trying to,
they got it tough. Next thing you go, some fucking guy's telling a joke at the Oscars, some other guy can't take it. Bam! Violence right there on international television.
Are you surprised that Hollywood is responding the way it is about that? Or do you think it's people who, the actors, the entertainers, and all those folks that are coming out and saying how horrible it was and despicable it was? Are they just panning for the audience? Or do you think that they truly believe that walking up on stage and smacking a guy like that was reprehensible?
I think number one, I think Chris Rock never expected it to happen. And I don't think anybody else on the planet did either. And I think that's the problem is, when you're somebody in that position, I think what you realize when you're in their job, there's the phrase, the show must go on. And for him to I'm sorry, people, I brought this up, but we got to get it out of our system. There isn't a whole shit ton of sports stuff going on. But
there will be a Nebraska connection at the end, I promise you.
But number one, when I first saw that, we were watching the Oscars because my wife likes to watch the fashion stuff, and I didn't really have that much interest in it. And I thought, well, there's nothing else on. What the hell? And then that happened. And I immediately went to Twitter because I knew that even though they cut off the American feed, we'd be able to find the feeds from all over the world. And, I showed them that. And my first response was, my God, Chris Rock has to be one of the most professional people on this earth. Because, he hit him. People are like, well, he slapped him. It wasn't a punch.
Oh, he hit him
okay,
hard.
you know what? You go, I'll tell you what, you go have some guy that's like, I don't know, 45 years old, slap you in the face as hard as he can. And we'll see what you think about that not being a punch. But he stood there, he took that. He didn't even rub his face. He just kind of looked around and went, okay, we're going on. The show must go on. And he just kept going. And I thought that guy has to be one of the most professional people. And honestly, I think both of them, other than the initial hitting him in the face, I thought all of that was handled about better than 99.9% of the rest of humanity would have done anything. It didn't continue on after that. It was just kapow and kind of over. And then they went on. So, yes, Craig.
It had to be an open hand slap. It had to be, and I'll tell you why. Because paper beats rock.
Oh God, you waited for that, didn't you?
No, I did, but and everybody's like, "Oh, it was fake." It was, but I watched the Japanese feed, the clip that actually got of all places shared in our coordination Slack chat room, and I watched that, and you can tell Chris Rock had no idea that was coming, and like when I looked at, if you're acting, I'm not trying to disparage anybody, but I don't know if either of those guys are good enough pure actors to be able to pull off kind of raw emotion in the moment. But like you look at their eyes, and their eyes are like glassy and kind of watery and a little bit, not a little bit, quite filled with emotion. But it was, I didn't watch the setup of it. Like, I don't give a crap about the Oscars. I didn't know the Oscars were going on until I checked Slack, and that's what everybody was talking about. So I'm going to check this out. The fact that it's still like the top thing in the news, just means that we need to find more important things to talk about.
I don't know. It's still, it's a big deal. It really is.
But to you, Todd, I think it was you who asked about, like these celebrities in the bubble. I think in the last 2 days, 2/3 of the hosts of the Oscars, Amy Schumer and Wanda Sykes, came out and said they were traumatized by the slap.
Oh my God, these people are traumatized.
And I said, really? Have you stepped into a bar? Is it just because it's people now, I guess to both of them, they are stand-up comedians similar to Chris Rock. So now do they have to be concerned, and do all stand-up comedians have to be concerned about somebody coming up on stage and being unruly? I get that, like saying something, to the wrong person in the crowd, or, trying to fend off a heckler and then coming up but to your point, John, kudos to Chris Rock. He could, in the real world, that's assault, brother. And I didn't even bother pressing charges. Now to bring that and get our Nebraska Cornhusker conversation started, one of my favorite memes that arose out of this incident, friend of the show, Josh, shared it, and it was classic Herbie face on Will and new Herbie face on Chris mid slap. So for the people that long for classic Herbie. So
the one neat thing that came out of it is Chris Rock's comedy show sales, his tickets have gone through the roof. I think I read where his tickets were selling for like $81, and at one show they went up to $411. So good for him. I like Chris Rock. I think he's funny as hell. I kind of liked Will Smith too. I still kind of like Will Smith. We'll see how he comes out of this. So
yeah, I guess, and I won't go on much about this. I'm truly saddened by the fact that, a guy goes up on stage on live television and smacks another guy in the face. And, I can't condone that, by the same token, I've been in a few comedy clubs from time to time, and I've been around other people. And I think sometimes, people want to push those boundaries. And when you say hurtful things, whether it's to get a laugh, or you can't claim that protection of I'm a comedian when you're throwing stuff out that can be personalized and can be hurtful. So, in my opinion, Chris Rock, he was out of line too. But, by the same token, how many times have we watched award shows with some of the funniest people in the world, cracking jokes and stuff like that, and we all laugh along. And it's too bad it happened. And I really hope that we don't see, well, I on a bunch of Twitter things I saw, teachers and principals are going, oh, great, I'm going to have some kid walk up and smack somebody at school tomorrow and saying, well, Will Smith did it. Hell, I don't know. But anyway, I guess
it doesn't translate like that. God, we fucking worry about that stuff so much.
I hear you.
It's funny that it happened in that situation though. And however award shows that were hosted by Ricky Gervais where he was like the indictments on the Hollywood culture in general, and nobody came up and decked him. So,
exactly.
If Scott Frost, Todd, if Scott Frost loses 9 games by 1 score again next season, what is your response? Are you gonna hit him? Are you gonna slap him?
Yeah, I'm gonna walk up and I'm gonna slap him. I'm gonna say, don't you ever put my wife's name out of your mouth again, or something like that. I don't know, but
keep my wife's name out your bleeping mouth.
Yeah. That's it. You wouldn't punch him.
I don't care. And I was listening to talk radio. I was listening to
apathy's how they get you, Todd.
Yeah.
No, it isn't. Scott Frost is not going to have a 9-loss season. He's not gonna. It's not going to happen.
You're like probably going to be 10.
No, it's going to be because if it's that bad, there's absolutely no way. If the season's on that kind of a trajectory, there's no way that can go on. And I was listening to a couple of guys talk the other day about what's the number, what's good, what's acceptable, what's not. And to be quite honest with you, I'm not a forecaster. I hate predictions, as you guys well know. But the bottom line is that it has to go beyond showing improvement. We're in year 5, and it has to go beyond being better than we were last year. So if this Nebraska football team doesn't win 8-9 games, then there's no way we can consider this a successful season. And Scott Frost, he's got to know that.
Okay, a couple things I want to talk about. In specifically into that, I was gonna say bowl eligible, and 6 wins, not 5 and 7, and limping in, on a technicality. But if it is, I'm looking down here, mid-October, and there are only 2 wins are to North Dakota and Georgia Southern. And I don't think that's going to be the case because you got Indiana and Rutgers in there and Purdue on the 15th of October, and of course Northwestern. But if they're 2-3 or 2-4, I guess at the time, do you cut bait, Todd?
I think if they get to 5 losses before they get to 5 wins, I think that would be my measuring stick.
Okay,
and that might be a bit of a cop out, but.
I think so. That's a very again. Let's remind people of the schedule. Now that we're into it, Dublin, Ireland, Northwestern, August 27th. At home against North Dakota on September 3rd. At home against Georgia Southern on the 10th. At home against Oklahoma on September 17th. Bye week. Then you have Indiana at Nebraska for homecoming October 1st. On the road at Rutgers and Purdue on the 7th and 15th of October, respectively. Another bye week after Purdue. Then you have home against Illinois on the 29th. Minnesota's at home on November 5th. On the road at Michigan, home against Wisconsin, at Iowa to finish things up on not Good Friday, on Black Friday. Hopefully it's good. It hadn't been for a number of years, but hopefully it's good. I think there's definitely the conversation, legitimate, statistical backup where if they are, let's see, if they're not pulling 5 wins to 6 wins by the time they get to Minnesota, it is what it is. It's going to be tough sledding on the road at the Big House, home against Wisconsin, and at Iowa. They need to be bowl eligible, I think, by November, by Minnesota.
I would agree.
That's not taking anything away from I think the ability is there. We've seen them play tough against all of those teams. So I'm not saying you can't win those games. And I think once you get to 5, 6, maybe 7 wins by that point, you've got a really good feel for where you're at, what works and what doesn't. And you're not fumbling around trying to find solutions. You have maybe a power rushing game or a speed game. You have, downfield ability, running, north and south, speed on the defense. We'll talk about a transfer portal player who's taken his official visit this weekend here in a few minutes. But if you are winning by November, you know what you need to do to keep winning. And at that point, I have enough confidence, even though we're, 7 months out, that I feel positive enough going to Michigan, home against Wisconsin, and then Iowa on the short week to be able to finish the games that got started last year, overcoming our own adversity and getting out of our own way. I think that if you're bowl eligible by November, you might have a 9-win season.
So let me ask you guys this, and I'm stepping over that line of being one of them, and I've never wanted to be one of them.
A J-sker?
Not one of you, just one of them. Are either of you guys at all concerned about how many players are not practicing this spring, and players that we would like to believe are going to be pivotal players on the team?
No. And I'll tell you why. This is the first I'm hearing about it.
Really?
I
There's
don't
a
follow
lot.
I don't follow the
and you have a brand new offense pretty much to learn. And it may not be a brand new offense in terms of all the plays being different, but apparently the terminology is different. So yeah, that's kind of a concern.
Top 4 tight ends.
Yeah.
None of the top 4. Your 2 returning offensive tackles. I think that's it on, those are the troubled spots on offense. Defensive line, that's a big area of concern anyway. And there's a number of those guys that are figured to play prominent roles that aren't practicing. I don't know. I didn't even think about that until the other day when I read the top 4 tight ends are not practicing this spring.
That's a good point. I think Frost I think he needs to win the West next year if you're going to call it successful. I mean, this is Nebraska football, okay? This isn't some watered down Scott Frost playground that's considered Nebraska football. And we all have lowered our standards because the savior boy got hired and decided, well, he just needs more time, or let's let him have all the excuses on the planet. This is still Nebraska football, one of the most winning programs in the history of college football. And if he can't be bothered to win his division, that's one of the crappiest divisions in college football, well, why the hell is he sticking around? And why are people keeping him around other than they like going to parties or golfing with him or something? What is the point?
I have a very important question I have to ask. Who is the mad scientist that switched yours and Todd's consciousnesses?
That's what I was wondering. I don't have.
We are in space. I did, I wish the best for him, and I think we have a lot of the pieces, but I thought the same stuff last year. So, I think the coaching staff is all saying and doing the right things. Honestly, I think this probably right now, if they fired Scott Frost, they could just turn to Mark Whipple or Mickey Joseph and say, take over, and we wouldn't miss a heartbeat. Okay, maybe a little bit. We'd miss, somebody would go, oh, no, it's not the Savior boy or something. I don't know. They make excuses for him like we have all along. But I think all the pieces are there, and if we don't win this year,
You think that? So I say bowl eligible 6 wins or better. Todd, you say he's got to have 5 wins before he has 5 losses. And John, your bar is a little higher, and I'm not disputing that he's got to win the West.
I think he has to contend for it.
And you said a minute ago he's got to win the West.
To be a successful season, he needs to contend for it to keep his job. That would be my bar.
Okay.
There's always extenuating circumstances. Like right now, the baseball program, we lost 2 starting pitchers for the year, right at the beginning of the year. And that is terrible. That is not just for those guys getting injured, but it's terrible for your outlook on this season for guys you thought were going to be solid performers and, have a key part of your team's success. So there's always extenuating circumstances. It just shouldn't be somebody was clapping and it threw my center off, or, we had a great practice and I don't know what I guess they weren't prepared to go out there this game. If any of that stuff gets said this year, I wouldn't walk up and slap Scott Frost because I am old and feeble and he is not.
Yeah,
I am not that dumb.
I am not going to go slap him either, because about the time I pick my hand up and start to swing it, he's going to deck me. And I do not want to be hit by Scott Frost. And, so.
Are you sure you don't want the distinction of being the one guy who was hit by Scott Frost?
No, if I'm going to be that, I'd rather be the guy that was hit by Nick Saban, or, the guy that was hit by, Dabo Sweeney, or, a college football coach. I'd rather be hit by a college.
Wow. Holy.
I feel like Nick Saban limp wrist slaps. I'm just saying.
You think he's a limp?
I don't think he has to worry about it.
Maybe not. But I think
he would raise his hand and somebody.
I think Nick Saban's going to be one of those guys that tucks his chin and goes to the body. Just.
I think we have very different views of Nick Saban. So, let's talk then about a transfer portal player who's going to be on campus for the spring game. Yeah. Is that this weekend already? Or is that next weekend?
What? The spring game?
Yeah.
It's April 9th.
Okay. Well, I genuinely didn't know. So I couldn't remember. I'm sorry.
It's not too far away. Oh my God, it isn't too far away.
John, I made a mistake.
Okay.
Please forgive me. If the rumors are true, and if he's made it this long, and 2, if they're true, and there's a man of the cloth listening or watching this right now, Father, forgive me. I've sinned. All right. I made a mistake. But I'm going to screw up the name. Ochan Mathis, edge rush from Texas Christian University, is going to be on campus for his official visit on the 9th of April for the spring game. And we could use a rush end.
Yeah, we could. We haven't had one since Randy Gregory, I think.
Who did we have last year? Honestly, as a rush end,
JoJo Doman when they put him out there.
Ben Stilley, maybe.
I was gonna say, and Ben Stilley was serviceable, and he was good enough. I don't think we talked about him last week with Brian, but or at least not because he didn't get an invite to the combine. But that's a guy who could surprise people and go late on Saturday I think he'll be picked up somewhere. He's got, and I don't know, maybe I'm giving him too much credit. Maybe I'm a bit of a homer but he reminded me a lot of Brett Kiesel, from BYU, who went and played with Nebraska, Pittsburgh Steelers for a number of years. But then Damian Daniels, of course. But you're right. We haven't had like a true rush end since 2013, 14. I mean, Randy Gregory, it's been a long time. And we saw then, and unfortunately in the absence of such a player have seen that can really impact the defense in a big way. And it was unfortunate that it fell oftentimes too often on JoJo Domann to be that guy, because he was so good in doing everything defensively that Janander said, let's put him everywhere. And again, I'm trying not to overinflate his, ability, though I think he's got a high ceiling. But he was the kind of guy with the kind of motor that he was utilized, I think, a lot. And I spent a lot of time watching Steeler football, and everybody knows that, of Troy Polamalu, of just disruptive everywhere on the field, could play, get in the offensive backfield, could, grab an interception, could hit hard. That he reminded me a lot of that. Different haircut. I think that's about the biggest difference between the two. But because he was so good, oftentimes he had to play maybe out of position to make up for the fact that we didn't have a true rush end. So I'm excited for the visit. I hope everything goes well. And I'll be honest with you, if you're going to bring in a transfer portal player who you think can make an immediate impact in the fall, you're going to bring him in for any weekend in the offseason. Spring game is a good time to bring him in because nobody draws a crowd like Nebraska spring game.
He would go, damn well he'd get on the field immediately.
That's what I said.
I mean, there wouldn't even be really a question about it. I mean, this guy was 2021 second team All Big 12. Started all 12 games last year, 4 sacks, tied for the team lead at TCU. Second with 7 tackles for loss, and fifth with 45 tackles, which 45 tackles for a year for a rush end that's not sucky. You know what I mean? This guy could come to Nebraska and go, I'm just going to walk in here and start playing. So,
and he's 6'5", 235. So he's got good the measurables, like that's a good size for a rush end. You look back, Randy Gregory, that's very comparable to where he was, maybe a little heavier than Gregory. I think Randy always remind me is very strong, but also kind of lean. And I'm sure, over time and munchies, he filled out a little bit more. But 247 does have 100% or transfer portal crystal ball leaning 100% towards Texas. But what do they know? They're wrong half the time. So.
Isn't Gary Patterson there now? Isn't that where he ended up?
I think so. Yeah, you're right. Like as a consultant.
Here's the secret. This is how to get him. We've got to make sure that he goes to Muchachos and has a burrito at Muchachos before the spring game, because Muchachos is batting 1,000 on commits. Those that have had a burrito at Muchachos, 100% of them have then committed to play football at Nebraska. So let's pull out all the stops. Let's not mess around with this guy talking runs or anything like that. Getting down to Muchachos, get the pipeline burrito down that guy's gullet, and let's make damn sure that he's a Nebraska Cornhusker.
I have a question. This is a serious question. Please don't dismiss it. If Muchachos is running a special, a la the buy one burrito, get one free type special, that's available to anybody. And it just so happens that O'Shawn Mathis's burrito is free. Does that count as an impermissible benefit?
No, because Nick at Muchachos would work out some type of NIL agreement, and it would be fine.
I like it. So the opportunities are endless. If you're listening to this, John, Muchachos is the place for you. Not Mahachkos. That's me. I don't have a restaurant, but Muchachos, where you're guaranteed great food, great service, and probably likelihood of signing in Nebraska.
Somebody should buy a billboard that Casey Thompson. Remember what Casey Thompson said about Texas? He said you're going to get much better NIL deals at Nebraska because they're much more focused, and Texas is just. Plus, he left. He came here.
You got to wonder that I don't know if Texas and TCU played last year. I'd have to assume that they did.
Yeah, they did.
Thank you. So those guys have some familiarity, and he might be able to say, "Let me tell you about some of the opportunities up here."
Yeah,
just saying. All right. So let's move on, shall we? Let's talk about a player who is not going anywhere. And that would be for the Nebraska men's basketball team. And of course, I'm talking about Derrick Walker Jr. He's coming back for more punishment.
That is incredible news. It really is, because Nebraska's biggest problem probably has been roster turnover, and to hear that he's coming back as a super senior is he has experience. We got a guy named Blaze Keita, I think his name is Blaze Keita, coming in from Coffeyville. He's from Mali, Africa. I probably butchered that, but anyway, he's 6'10". He's a big guy. He helped Coffeyville win a JUCO national championship. The key to Derrick Walker isn't that he played well, but that he'll have the experience of playing in the Big Ten as a big guy, and that he can, Blaze Keita will have a mentor. Other players that come in now will at least have 1 year of mentorship from Derrick Walker. And Derrick Walker really turned out to be, I think, really good core player for Nebraska. I mean, he started every game the season.
Well, let's talk about some of his accolades from last year. A lot of things that maybe people don't realize when there's, a Bryce McGowan's on the roster. Started all 32 games, John, like you said, with team's leading rebounder, which is not, unusual for the big man. But perhaps most importantly, he shot 68.3% from the field, which that's a new record for Nebraska, single season record for field goal percentage. And whoever wrote this article so eloquently stated was previously held by some guy you don't know who played in 75, 76. The author of said article, available at coronation.com, John Johnston.
But yeah, I don't. Nobody remembers. That guy does, I'm sure, but I don't remember Nebraska basketball in 1975, 76.
This is what happens when I'm reading things. Todd leaves.
He did. He just dropped off. I bet wherever he's at, the internet just got cut.
Okay.
But Derrick Walker coming back. I mean, it'd really be nice to hear that Trey McGowan is coming back too. So Eduardo Andre is gone in the transfer portal, and I honestly think that's kind of good, because I think he improved, but I don't think he improved well enough to be a serviceable Big Ten guy throughout the entire season. So if we can upgrade the roster with him leaving, that's great.
Really, I think the most important thing for the men's basketball team, and is just roster consistency, because they haven't really had that in the Fred Hoiberg, era. Era is kind of overused, so I was trying to think of another word, but his tenure, it's just been a ton of turnover. And obviously we're seeing it now, as you mentioned, Eduardo Andre, Bryce McGowan's, there are others for sure, but you got to have some consistency. You got to have some type of like expectation, somebody to set the standard, say, hey, this is where we were. We had a bad year, but we finished by beating some top teams in the conference. So, we just got to keep, Nebraska just got to like I'm on the team, but Nebraska's got to maintain some roster consistency and start building that foundation. Meanwhile, we look at another men's program. This was supposed to be the one that was going to save us and keep our sanity in the spring. And we alluded to it earlier with the baseball team losing 2 pitchers right out the gate for unknown periods of time. However, they're still managing to make a few good things happen here and there. They lost to Creighton, which always sucks, but they did have a conference freshman of the week, Garrett Englum, 7 RBIs, hit 500, 3 doubles, 7 RBIs, stole a base, and all in the weekend series against Michigan. So,
yeah, the baseball teams have been, I don't know, disappointing would be a not strong enough a word. I don't want to call it catastrophe, but because we're just starting the Big Ten season and you never know what's going to happen. I don't think the Big Ten it's not a good conference this year at all. I mean, it's really a crappy conference head to toe. Did you watch it? 2 of the Michigan games were on TV this weekend. Did you watch any of it?
I did not. I didn't know that they were on. So I'm bad boy.
Well, I mean, Friday night, Michigan probably should have won, but they gave us, 10 walks, 3 hit by pitches. Michigan hit 4 home runs in a row. Was the 13th time that's ever happened in college baseball history. And they lost. And that was only the 2nd time that's ever happened. But when a team hits 4 home runs in a row and then loses. So that was weird. And Nebraska seems to be the home of doing really weird stuff in their sports in the last 2 years.
Yeah.
Anyway, but I think it was disappointing that the offense mostly just disappeared against what was not a very good Michigan pitching staff. So, and then the offense didn't do anything. I mean, Sunday game was 6-1, and they were honestly, what the hell? And then against Creighton, I did not watch or listen to that game. I actually was finishing my book. I got my book finished, but lost to Creighton 3-2, and apparently Creighton made so many mistakes we should have pummeled them, and we didn't.
No,
I think part of that you could chalk up to we're really young. Part of it you can talk up to the 2 guys we lost to the pitching staff, and part of it is, we had Mojo Hagee and Luke Roscom for years, for a very long time. And you can say what you want about either of those guys, but I think both of them kind of had a grit to them. I remember last year when Nebraska came up and, remember they were having these pod games in the Big Ten. And I sat up there and took photos by myself, like had an entire section to myself at US Bank Stadium.
I remember seeing those pictures of you.
But, there was a few times where Luke Roscom really just was lazy at bat, but then he picked it up after that and he turned into a guy where you could kind of count on him to get some timely hitting. And Mojo Hagee was just Mojo Hagee. And who are those guys on this team? I think Todd always brings that up when we talk about baseball, the gritty kind of players that are just going to grind out a hit or something when you need it. And they just do not have it. And their offense is really crappy. I want to propose, and I wish I had time to look this up.
I'm not sure if I'm willing to accept your proposal.
You haven't heard it yet.
Okay.
I mean, right now, if you look at the Big Ten, I mean, it's pretty much awful except for Maryland. I mean, Purdue has a really good record at like 16 or 17-1, but they pretty much haven't played anybody. But Minnesota is at the bottom. And that is, John Anderson has been, over the last, I think, 25 years, he has been consistently one of the best coaches in the nation, especially for a Northern team. And to see his teams at like 3-15 or something like that is really astonishing. So I am proposing this. Last year, the Big Ten didn't allow baseball to play any non-conference games, which means they lost all their midweek games, and all they got to do was play a conference schedule. All right. Well, everybody that follows college baseball knows that those midweek games are specifically so you can play players who aren't part of the regular rotation, so you can get your pitchers some experience and get them out there against other teams. Every team knows that. So since we didn't play any of those games last year, we just threw away an entire year of development because our conference does not give a single shit about baseball.
And if you think about it, realistically, 2, because they didn't play in 2020. That season got shut down.
Yeah.
And then you're absolutely right. It was an opportunity. Like, look, they could practice, but you don't get. Everybody knows this. I'm speaking cliches here or common sense, but you don't get the same out of practice that you do out of a game. So you don't know how different players are going to handle, live game situations. That decision, while at the time they might have, it was very short-sighted. I think might be the most concise way to say it, because look at where the conference is now. You have a lot of players who are lacking, 3-4 months of experience from playing those midweek games.
Yeah. I think it really hurts a lot. I was going to say I might slap Kevin Warren. But then he'd do that bureaucracy thing where it goes, and then it'd be a tragedy and nightmare. And
he'd flop. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, he would. Let's be honest.
Before we head on, I do want to talk about one team that's having some success, John.
Yes. Let's
talk about that softball team.
Well, they crushed Creighton 15-0 run.
It was glorious. 22-9 so far on the year, 2-0 in conference play. They're winning more at home, winning more on the way, winning more on neutral sites. The conference games that they play. First of all, I don't know what the men's schedule or what the men's actual record is, but you look at they went out and they beat ranked Michigan in 2 of the 3 games that the third game got canceled. Then your nose on the head, right here, or whatever, nose on the head. That makes too much sense. They short gamed Creighton, which I didn't realize that, run rules were a thing in college athletics, but that's tremendous to run rule Creighton. And then they're back out at home this weekend against Rutgers. Next weekend against Michigan State on the road. Iowa's in for a doubleheader midweek, which is odd, but it is what it is. And then, they're thick into the Big Ten schedule, and they've already beat what I think many are considering the best team in the Big Ten in Michigan. So Rhonda Revelle and her squad have a lot of positive momentum, and it's really fun to, we don't talk about them enough. We should, because as it is in Nebraska, the women's sports are the good ones. So we should probably just start focusing more on them and ignore the men.
Todd's back. So Todd, we talked about baseball. I know you've been going to a lot of the games.
You missed it. We're not going back.
What?
We don't backtrack. We don't rehash. Sorry, you missed it. Next time, get better internet. That's all the time we have for the show this week.
Hey, Todd, what's going on with this baseball team?
Well, you said it earlier. The 2 starting pitchers are out, but it's a bigger issue than that. They can't hit.
Bigger issue.
They can't hit. And if, the pitching got off to a rocky start at the beginning of the season, but and I'm not going to say the pitching's great either, but when you take a look at the fact that there have been games where the lineup has had 5 freshmen in the starting lineup, you put 5 freshmen out there against a team like Michigan, who has, a significant number of 4-year and 5-year seniors out there. That's going to make it tough. Look at the batting order. Coach Bolt has tried, darn near everything to generate some kind of offense, short of putting Matt Anderson on the bench. He's about the only one of the, returners that's been a solid player, but this year he's not hitting up to snuff.
Right.
It was. I counted him up the other day, and I can't be sure what it was, but the game I was at when they put the opening, the starting lineup out there, I think Nebraska had 4 or 5 guys in the starting lineup that were hitting under 200. Under 200. That's horrible.
That's Greg Mahochko territory right there.
I'll tell you what. That is not good. And, the errors that they make on defense, it's just a team that lacks leadership. It lacks it doesn't
lacks Mojo Hagee.
Well, you might be right there. Who'd have thought?
Luke Roscom.
Well,
while you were gone, Todd, John floated two theories of one of them being specific to Nebraska, and that was the gritty players, the Haggies and the Roscoms, and the other being, I think a lot of people forget about this, is the Big Ten did not allow midweek, non-conference games last year, and then if you go back 2 years ago, there was no baseball because that was when the pandemic first started. So John theorized, and I don't have any reason to doubt. I never doubt John. He's the wisest, most knowledgeable man of all time. But he's wondering if lightning is going to strike him. Without all that extra ability to, get live game experience, that a lot of these guys, and Nebraska is not the only one. He mentioned Minnesota, and the conference as a whole. Really, it was a short-sighted decision to remove the non-conference schedule last year because the Big Ten seems to be maybe falling behind a little bit this year.
I don't disagree with that. I think that has had an impact, but I will say, it's everyone. I mean, it's just not Nebraska that suffered because of that. And the
conference isn't good.
Pardon?
The conference is not good.
I don't think it's that good either, but I'll tell you what, Michigan looked damn good this weekend, with the exception of their defense. And, they've won in spite of themselves. Now they're pitching.
They have older players, right?
They have older players.
Okay. Then if you took the Big Ten and you looked at them and said, who replaced most of their pitching staff in the last year or 2 years? Those are the teams that are most affected by the fact that they didn't have any development.
Yes, because right now, Michigan's playing well. Iowa's got a veteran pitching staff, and I think Purdue's got a fairly. I haven't paid that close attention to Purdue, but again, when you take Jake Buns and Kyle Perry out of the lineup, before we're a third of the way in the season, those are two left-handed arms that they were counting on. And it's very unfortunate. Shea Shanneman is, he's pitching well, but on the games, about 2 out of every 3 games, he gets no offensive support. You cannot put a team where you have 2 guys hitting above 300, only 2, and you have 4 or 5 guys that are hitting under 200. That's horrible. And, I don't know what it's going to take to get those guys, to get the offense turned around. So,
it breaks down your pitching staff, doesn't it?
It sure does.
I mean, you ask them to go out there and basically take a game on by themselves, and they know okay, great, I have to do everything because my offense sucks.
There's some firepower in the bullpen, but it's young and inconsistent. And, that kid that they trotted out there last night, Jelkin against Creighton, he's got magic in that arm, but he doesn't have the swagger. He doesn't have the confidence. When Nebraska's pitchers have that swagger, have that strut, like that kid that threw the final few innings for Creighton last night, then Nebraska's going to have some. When they have guys that play the kind of baseball, that gritty, hard-nosed baseball, like Nebraskans have seen, for quite a few years. Mojo Hagee. God, I'm drawing a blank. Who the hell was the center fielder last year? My memory is so dang bad. Can't think of his name.
It wasn't Luke Roscom.
No, well, Luke Roscom was Luke was my favorite player on that team last year. I loved watching Luke Roscom play.
I got to stop you right there, Todd. And this is very important. Anytime you have a sports team and they have a player named Mojo is your favorite player.
I like redheaded, left-handed hitters.
Very specific.
I'm partial to redheaded, left-handed hitters.
Does your wife know?
We have not had that conversation yet.
All right, I'm sorry. I had to interrupt your
you know what? The baseball team,
with my foolishness.
I still think the baseball team, I got to believe they're going to find their groove. I got to believe that things are going to start clicking because there is talent. Where have we heard this? What sports team have we heard if there was just some consistency because we've got some talent,
Women's volleyball.
Yeah. Well, Core Jackson, the kid from Canada, he's going to be a hell of a good player. Luke Jessen, he's going to be a really good player. This kid that pinch hits from Johnston, Iowa, Swanson, that kid has got pop in his bat. Garrett Anglem, those guys are going to be very, very good baseball players. They need some seasoning though. And unfortunately, Cam Chick, who, Cam, he's a gritty ball player. You want a gritty ball player. Cam Chick's a gritty ball player. Hell, he's hitting 188 or something like that, That's
why?
So
is that?
do you think kind of with all the names that you just mentioned there, Todd, do you think that while we don't want to write this season off, that this is something of rebuilding to potentially bigger, better things next year? Like you're going to have to suffer through, obviously the injuries are what they are, and that sucks. But, you mentioned a lot of young talent. Garrett Anglem, for one, we just talked while you decided to abandon us for a short time there. We talked about him being the Big Ten freshman of the week, but so there's a lot of young talent, like you said, just needs some seasoning. While we're not writing off 2022, we can look ahead to next year and see, brighter horizon ahead.
Yeah, I think we can, and I'm not writing off 2022. I don't think we should. No. Yeah, I think this team somehow will find their groove. I think they will because, the pitching, I've got more confidence in the pitching right now and a lot of people will criticize that, but I got more confidence in the pitching than I do the offense. And, it's hard to believe that the whole team is in a slump. But I got a sense that things are going to open up. I do. So, you talked about softball. Yeah. That's when I finally got back in here. Coach Ravel's got those kids playing good. I mean, they are playing really good. And to win 2 games in Michigan against, I think they were a 19th ranked team up there.
Correct. Yes, sir.
19. Yes. That's as good as it's been for Nebraska softball in a long time. And, Carol Hutchins, she's a legend as far as, she's Mount Rushmore of college softball coaches. And she has a lot of respect for Rhonda Revelle. When Rhonda Revelle was going through some, a rough spot a few years ago, Carol Hutchins was very much in her corner. And she's first class all the way, but Michigan is good. Nebraska beat a very good softball team on their home field twice. So good for them. I think the difference with the softball team this year is, they've got they got a couple of young players that, they're in the top 5 or something like that in the country for home runs. And those 2 sisters, the Andrews, I think it's Andrews, isn't it? Maybe Bailey Andrews. I should do my homework before I come on. Those girls can hit the ball. And more importantly, the veteran pitchers are keeping Nebraska in ball games. Nebraska's not losing games because of their pitching. And that's been the case the last 2 or 3 years. The pitching has let the team down.
Well,
okay.
They're going to be in the regional. Softball team's in the regional. They'll get there. No question in my mind.
Billy and Brooke Andrews, you're right.
Yep.
The sisters.
Not
twins?
No, I think one's a sophomore, one's a freshman. Maybe one
junior and sophomore. Brooke and Billy respectively.
Yeah.
So and that's terrific. And we're just gonna have to start making the Five Heart Podcast the Nebraska Women's Athletics Podcast because they're the good teams right now.
And do we become the Break Your Heart podcast if we're going to talk about women? Is that
no?
Was
your heart broken? Is this where you're going to give us dating tips?
Don't
do it. Just don't. Don't date.
Is this why you're recording from a hotel room secretly?
Listen, Greg, I got to tell you.
I'm all ears.
Oh, God, he's leaning forward with that kind of thing guys do at the bar when they're like, I want to leave, you son of a bitch.
Greg, you're going to have to come and spend a weekend at my house, my apartment. And you need to have late night conversation with Mrs. Tammy Wolverton. All right. John has done that on occasion.
I'm a better man for it.
After you have late night conversation with Tammy Wolverton, you'll have newfound respect for me, and you will understand the way the world really works. So I invite you.
Does she have a shoulder bag or a clutch? I'm trying to figure out what purse she keeps your balls in.
I sacrificed those about 30 years ago.
Yeah, I've put in about half my time. All right, guys. That's enough testicular talk for 1 week. That'll do it for this episode of the Five Heart Pod.
Wait. I have my book is done. It's up for pre-order on Amazon. I'll put a link to it in the show notes. It's for heart attack survivors. There you go. That's all I wanted to say. I needed to get that.
I'm sorry. The one time I didn't overtly plug your second book, Manage Your Damage, the thing behind John's boobs.
I don't think anybody's got this far in this. If they did, I'd really like to hear from them. I really, honest to God, would like to hear anybody that got this far into this podcast after I just go, oh, Will Smith. And then it's just shit. I just turned it into shit right at the beginning, didn't I?
We salvage it, John. That's what we do. Okay. But no, that's a good point. If you're watching this on YouTube and you've had enough, put in the comments the time code of when you're like, no, I'm done. Right before you leave, you hit pause if you're tired of listening to John, and put in, like 3:37 or 53:37, whatever it is. John wants to know when you've had enough. He wants to know your breaking point. So with that being said, I'm going to try to close the show again. This has been the Five Heart Podcast, a CornNation.com production, part of the SB Nation Podcast Network. I want to thank almost all the time here, Todd Wolverton, for joining us and then departing and then finding his way back. That's all about life. That's what life is. It's just finding your way back.
Finding your way back. Yep.
For our founder, fearless leader, and teddy bear aficionado, and you take that exactly how you want to take that, John Dem Johnston. And his teddy bear. No, I'm not going to name the teddy bear.
I thought she was going to go insane. Normally, when I slap the teddy bear like that, the dog goes completely ballistic. And this time, maybe you heard her a little bit go, moo, but she usually turns into like an explosion.
We can't see the dog because you're in space. What the hell?
You're not even with me. What?
We can't see the dog because you're in space. Yeah, so we didn't know. We just thought you were slapping a teddy bear to get it ready for the rough stuff, I guess. I don't know. Yeah.
Oh, my God.
I'm Greg Mahachko signing off, maybe for the last time. This is the Five Heart Podcast, where we remind you this week and every week that 5 heart and 1 teddy bear apparently is all the heart you need. John?
Go Big Red.
Todd?
I have nothing else to say.
I'm just glad you didn't say anything that was trademarked, like the Final Frontier. Goodbye, everybody. This has been another soft-spoken broadcast from coordination.com.